Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another Keto Dinner Ideas video. If you're new here, we film these keto cooking videos every single week to give you a little motivation to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep on. And we would love for you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and join the crew. First up this week, we made these awesome seared sea scallops with some crunchy roasted asparagus. So to start with, I have a bunch of asparagus here, fresh. I was worried it was going to be too tough, but it was a little tender. Went ahead, unbundled it, and then I'm just snipping off these rough ends. Now this is just the way I do it. I know some people prefer to cut it, but we like to wiggle it on one end and then let it snap naturally, and it just gets that toughest part off of it. Some people would say this is a waste of asparagus, but it's how I like to do it. So we're just going to go ahead and do that for all of our asparagus to make sure we got nothing but tender parts left. And after I do that, I am washing all of it really well and then just drying it with a kitchen towel. I took a large cookie sheet, lined it with nonstick foil, and I'm just dumping all of my asparagus out onto it and coating it with a couple tablespoons, 2 or 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And I'm using my hands to actually make sure that every single piece of asparagus is all the way fully coated because I want this asparagus to be crispy. So then I'm just spreading it out evenly, making sure that all the asparagus has got enough room to get nice and roasted, topping it with a very generous amount of Himalayan pink sea salt, along with some fresh ground black pepper. And then I'm gonna pop this whole thing into a 400-degree oven for 25 minutes. Now, once my asparagus is about halfway done cooking, you just gotta time it right, I'm taking my sea scallops. I have about a pound of them here. These aren't the largest sea scallops, but they're not like the small bay scallops either. They're kind of middle of the road. They were previously frozen, so I just thawed those in the fridge overnight, drained the excess liquid out of them, and I am just laying them out onto some paper towels to get all of the excess moisture off of them. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and peel that back. You can see they are nice and dried off, and I'm sprinkling them with some sea salt and some ground black pepper. Just gonna flip these over and season the other side like this as well. And then sticking these to the side, I'm getting my cast iron skillet. I think this is a 10-inch one. I always have this linked in the description box with the silicone handle I use for it as well. I went ahead and preheated it on medium heat, added 3 tablespoons of butter, turned it up to medium-high heat, about 6 on my stove, and waited until this butter got just nice and foamy like this. And then I'm adding my sea scallops. You don't want to overcook scallops. So I want to get a nice sear on these, but because they're smaller, I'm only going to cook them about 2 minutes on each side. So lucky for me, they filled up my pan just absolutely perfectly. So I probably did these 2.5 minutes because I, did start a timer for it probably after I got them all laid in there just to make sure I didn't go over. And then I'm just using some tongs to gently flip those over. And you can see some of them got darker than others. And then after I flip them over on the other side, I'm adding about a tablespoon of dry white cooking wine to the pan, and I'm also letting them cook for about 2 to 2.5 minutes on this side as well. And then just removing them to a dish to sit for about a minute while I get my roasted asparagus out of the oven. And again, you just want to time this recipe just right. Here's our asparagus. It turned out so crispy. This asparagus was so good. And here are sea scallops all plated up. I did sprinkle a little parsley on there to make them appear better for the photo. But as I said, if these were the really large sea scallops, then you're going to want to get a harder, nice, crunchy, crispy sear on the outside of them. But because they're a little bit smaller, I wanted to make sure I didn't overcook them because that's about the worst thing you can do to a scallop is overcook it. And then I have them plated up with that awesome roasted asparagus. And scallops are one of my all-time favorite foods. And this asparagus actually is so good that it almost stole the show away from the scallops. Next up, have this awesome, easy keto ground beef casserole from Casey Trenum. I will link the original recipe down below. So to start with, to cast iron skillet, I'm adding a pound of ground beef using my handy dandy meat chopper upper tool. I always have linked in the description box to go ahead and break that hamburger meat apart. And once we have it all crumbled and browned, I am going to drain the excess grease out of it. Returning it back to the stove, I'm adding 3 ounces of cream cheese, kind of breaking it apart with my spoon a little to help it melt, and just mashing and mixing that into our ground meat until it's all mixed together nicely. Once it is, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of beef broth, along with 1/2 cup of whipping cream, 2 teaspoons of liquid aminos, a teaspoon of garlic powder, and then I'm also adding in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of ground black pepper. I'm mixing this all together really well and bringing it to a little bit of a boil. And then I let it simmer for probably 5 to 10 minutes, just until my sauce thickened up some. And once it did, I'm adding some just regular old cut green beans. I did drain the excess juice out of these. I haven't cooked with canned vegetables in so long, but this was just really convenient, and it really turned out well. But you just want to make sure that you do drain them and check and make sure they don't sneak in any sugar or anything on you. Putting those on the top layer, and I'm just kind of mashing those in a little to flatten them. And then we're going to top this with cheese. So I have 3/4 a cup of mozzarella cheese and 3/4 a cup of shredded extra sharp cheddar. And we did shred the cheddar cheese ourselves to save on carbs, because heads up, green beans are a little higher in carbs than other vegetables. And so I was looking to kind of scrimp and save on carbs where I could. So after I have this topped all the way, I'm just going to pop this into a 350-degree oven for 25 minutes. Here's what it looks like when it comes out. You can still see it bubbling, and here it is plated up. This was the perfect keto comfort food, and for those of you who are looking for keto recipes that are also family friendly and like toddler friendly, here it is right here. Green beans, meat, and cheese. Like, what is not to love about this? And the fact that it's so quick and easy makes it perfect also for a keto weeknight meal. Next up, I made these buffalo chicken lettuce wraps. This is a version of a recipe from Skinny Taste. She made hers differently, so I do have her original recipe linked down below. You can check that out. But for me, to a crock pot, I am adding just about 2.5 to 3 cups of thawed out, raw, cut up chicken breast. Now, for her, she used like 3 large chicken breasts, and she cooked hers on high for 4 hours. For me, I'm gonna do on high for 3 hours. I preheated my crock pot. You can see here how it's already starting to cook the chicken that I just added. So again, hers is a little different. Check that out if you want to do it differently. On top of that, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of coarsely cut up onion, along with 1 celery stalk that I diced up really coarsely, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, and then I am also adding, just eyeballing some salt and pepper, because I felt like, I'm not going to cook anything without that. Then I'm adding 2 cups of low sodium chicken broth to the top of that, stirring it all in really well, popping the lid on, and I'm going to cook mine first go round for 3 hours on high. If you're just doing the chicken breast, you might want to do a 4 hours on high. After mine is done, she drains hers and then adds sauce, but because all of my veggies are kind of cooked down, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of hot sauce now, letting it kind of marinate and season. I'm going to put the lid back on and cook this for another final hour. So I'll still be at 4 hours total. Now, when it was done cooking at this point, I did decide to go ahead and drain the excess juice at this time. So I just put that through a colander. Now I'm just dumping all of my chicken and veggies back into the crock pot, and I'm just going to eyeball and douse it with a couple more tablespoons of hot sauce and mix that all together before I make my buffalo chicken wraps. And this is a recipe you really can't mess up, I don't think. So however you feel like doing it, you do it. Now, to plate these up, I am using romaine lettuce. I wanted to use like a Bibb or butter lettuce, like a different type. I don't really use romaine that much, since all of the romaine scares in the States. This is California grown and not Arizona grown, so I felt like I was a little safer. And I went ahead and rinsed those, and then just plated them up with a little bit of the buffalo chicken mixture in the middle. Topped it with some keto-friendly blue cheese dressing, and then I crumbled feta cheese on top of mine. The original recipe, they also add like some shredded carrots and celery and stuff, but I liked mine just like this and thought it had enough celery flavor already just from cooking the chicken with the celery stalk. This was also perfect for keto lunch left over the next day. Last up this week, oldie but a goodie, we are cooking peace, love, and low carbs pork egg roll in a bowl. We did change one ingredient from the way we normally make this though. So to start with, in a large saucepan, I am adding 2 teaspoons of sesame oil over medium-high heat. And to that, I am adding a teaspoon and a half, really, of minced garlic. And I'm just mixing that around until my garlic gets fragrant. To that, I'm adding a 1/2 cup of chopped up onion. It's like a 1/2 of a small onion chopped up, along with the white and light green parts of about 2 stalks of green onions. And I'm just cooking those and stirring them till they get a little translucent. Then I'm adding 1 pound of ground pork straight to my pot, and using my meat chopper upper to break that apart and brown it. And this is why I love this recipe so much. It's so versatile, is I'm adding pork, but you could add beef, you could add chicken, turkey, shrimp, any kind of protein that you want to add to this would probably taste delicious. So after I get that broken apart and it starts browning, I am adding 1/2 teaspoon of ground ginger to it. Then I also added a 1/4 teaspoon sea salt and a 1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper, and I'm just continuing to break that apart and brown it. Now here's where I change change the ingredients some. I'm using a tablespoon of this chili garlic sauce in place of Sriracha because Sriracha has sugar added to it and this does not. And I love the flavor of this sauce. It is so good and it's the perfect level of spice. So after I add that, I am stirring it in really well. And then we're gonna add our tricolor coleslaw mix. Now this is about a 14 and a half ounce bag of shredded cabbage. There's a tiny bit of carrots added to it. On top of that, I am adding 3 tablespoons of liquid aminos, and then I'm adding 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar. Check your ingredients on this. Some of the brands try to slip in sugar, so just make sure it's just rice and vinegar, basically, 0 carbs. Popping a lid on that, just letting it wilt down all the way. I do like to serve mine with the cabbage still a little crispy, but just cook it down to how you prefer it. I just sprinkled a little bit of sesame seeds on top, along with some chopped up green onion from those onions that we cut up earlier. And there you go, guys. That's this week's Keto Dinner Ideas, what to eat for dinner if you are on a keto or low carb diet. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. If you did, please share it with your friends. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know what you like about our videos. Let us know any video topics that are keto related, low carb related that you'd like to see from us in the future. And we'll do our best to get those up eventually, slowly but surely. All right, until next time. Bye, guys.
Autumn comes too soon. Autumn comes too soon. The line